So, Phase 4 has ended, and the first part of the Multiverse saga is over. By the fans and critically, it is considered the worst phase in the MCU thus far, in comparison to the first 3 phases. While many believe that the Multiverse saga's teething problems are down to them just introducing new characters to compensate for the ones that are finally pulling the plug like Iron Man, Black Widow, etc., the problems for Phase 4 go a lot deeper than that. I have made many videos where I glaze over some of the issues that Phase 4 has, videos about why I fell out of love with the MCU due to this phase, and even videos diving deep into why I don't like some of the recent films as well. Despite me liking parts of the phase, I do believe that fundamentally Phase 4 is the weakest phase and isn't up to par and the standard that the MCU should be aiming for. So now that Phase 4 finally ended with Black Panther Wakanda Forever, here is my critical analysis of why Phase 4 failed so drastically. Number 1. Oversaturation. The Multiverse saga aims to complete a brand new major story arc for the MCU in not 10 years, but only 5. With the gap between WandaVision and Avengers Secret Wars being half of what it took to get from Iron Man to Avengers Endgame. Naturally, there will be more movies a year releasing to compensate for the lost time. But not only are they doubling down on the amount that they produce each year, Marvel Studios is going all out and producing up to 3 to 4 shows per year as well, alongside the release of the movies. In 2021 alone, we got WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, Eternals, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, What If, and Spider-Man No Way Home. That's a mental amount of projects to release in just 1 year. And your average person that has a 9-to-5 job or a person that tends to be busy on a day-to-day basis is not going to have the time to watch all of these shows. I would know this from personal experience. Another partial problem of this also comes from the fact that the MCU is a connected universe, and it's common knowledge with the general public that you have to watch everything to understand the crossover movies, or at the very least, you have to watch a large portion of the films and the shows. With the release of 8 Things in 2021 alone, this became a chore. People started to become fatigued from superhero movies. The issue is, the MCU had already hit its peak and found the sweet spot with 3 movies a year. But because the hype and excitement generated a major financial gain from 3 movies a year, Disney as a company would naturally want to boost profits. And those 3 movies a year were generally considered great critically and financially. And what better way than to increase profits than to increase the amount of films and shows produced a year? The only problem is that there comes a point where too many is too much, not just for the general audiences, but the major fans as well, who, like I mentioned, might not have time to sit through 8 episodes of a Disney Plus series and then go to the theatre to watch the latest release. Oversaturation of anything is bad, and it severely affected the MCU for the worse in Phase 4, and thus, as you could imagine, some of the storytelling suffered as well. Number 2. Overworking employees. Overworking the VFX teams and even Kevin Feige himself by spreading him too thin was a massive mistake Phase 4 made, which made it vulnerable to mistakes. Kevin Feige, the main man at the top at Marvel Studios, had to oversee so many projects in 2021 and 2022 for them all to work and coincide in this large universe, so there is bound to be some slip-ups somewhere. Not only did the writing take a bad turn in Phase 4, so did the visual effects. And as reports stated a few months ago, VFX artists were working overtime to get Marvel projects finished so that they could be put out on time. And due to the sheer number of films and shows, they simply did not have enough resources to finish the projects. It's worth mentioning though that Marvel Studios doesn't actually have visual effects employees, rather they are third-party hired, which means it's a different company which is hired to do the visual effects for the studio. And clearly whoever they are contracted with didn't have enough members of the team to spread across the entire phase, due to the enormous amount of work that had to be done. Remember, these weren't just 2-hour films, they were episodes of a show which could end up being an hour each. Number 3. Bad writing. As I mentioned briefly in my second point, bad writing was also a major issue with MCU Phase 4. Tying slightly into my point about overworking the employees, Marvel Studios also produced shows and films that were not up to the writing standard of Phase 3. And while this may be heavily subjective, and you guys may have your own view on this topic, I think the general universal consensus is that Phase 4 is poorly written in comparison to the first 3. The main examples of this are Thor Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and She-Hulk. I've covered these films' bad writing in other videos, so I won't go into too much detail here, but I'll give a brief overview for context. Thor Love and Thunder felt cheap and lazy because it prioritized jokes over substance, and for a character that is so heavily rooted in shame, guilt, anger, and pain should not have this level of dialogue in a film that could be so densely populated with emotional substance. It also doesn't utilize the main villain and breaks the show don't tell rule. Apart from the start of the film, we don't see Gore kill any other god, but we're supposed to believe that he is the God Butcher, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. How do we see him as a threat? How is he meant to be a villain that we know could kill Thor? But moving on to Multiverse of Madness, it was mainly lazy writing than anything when it came to this film. America Chavez is the only America Chavez in the entire multiverse. Okay, well that just breaks the rules set out in Loki then. How does Doctor Strange and America progress the plot forward whilst transcending the multiverse? I know, a memory portal that unlocks some crucial information. Seems quite convenient, don't you think? And the movie uses every MacGuffin possible to make the story accessible instead of letting the story come from the heart. It was lazy things like this that just added up over the entire movie, taking you out of it. And She-Hulk, I don't even want to talk about She-Hulk, just watch my video on it if you want to hear what I have to say about that. So the MCU has bad writing, and they are only 3 examples. Across the board in Phase 4, it has generally followed these same trends that I have laid out in these examples. Bad jokes, lazy writing, and not consistent with its own rules. And speaking of which, number 4, not consistent. One thing that really annoys me about a universe that is meant to be interconnected is how inconsistent it really is, especially the multiverse aspects. Once again, this point has been largely covered by my video where I break down how the rules of the multiverse don't make any sense whatsoever, so if you want to check that out, you also can, but I'm going to talk more generally about the phase instead of the multiverse. Phase 4 introduces rules and new magic and new concepts that are detrimental and dangerous to the entire universe as a whole. The issue with having a massive interconnected universe and introducing new laws, new magic, 4 phases in is that you can severely undermine what came before. And this is exactly what happens in Phase 4. For example, in Thor Love and Thunder, the idea of eternity was introduced. Stormbreaker was also the key to eternity. So that begs the question, why didn't Thor, knowing of eternity's existence, ever try to find him during the 5-year time gap in between Avengers Infinity War and Endgame? In Spider-Man No Way Home, the idea of the spell that can erase people's memories is also introduced. And this wasn't a new concept discovered just recently. In fact, Strange had used it before, as discussed with Wong. Why did Strange nor Wong suggest using this on Thanos during Infinity War to make him forget about the Infinity Stones? That would literally solve all of their problems, and none of the pain and suffering that came out of those 2 movies would have ever happened. If the multiverse didn't exist before Loki, how does the Ancient One then know about the multiverse in Doctor Strange 1? I could go on, but those are just a few examples of how some of the rules in Phase 4 undermine what came before. Overall, Phase 4 was a mess, and with reports coming out stating that they are going to try and tone down with Phase 5 and try and respect each film's production, I feel as though we could be heading in the right direction for Phases 5 and 6 back to how it was back in Phases 1, 2 and 3. But Phase 4 will most likely be considered one of the weakest phases in MCU's history. And the points that I have laid out to you today is exactly why. Thank you for watching this video essay. If you did enjoy, make sure to like button, make sure to subscribe. If you are new around here, we post video essays every single week. If you enjoy these type of content as well, then also make sure you're subscribed. We're so close to 20,000 subscribers, so let's try and hit it. That would be absolutely awesome. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care and peace.